You can't just go out guns blazing. You need to figure out, well, what is it that I truly do that makes people feel the light, feel my brilliance?
So many people feel like they've either been stuck in the shadows, hidden in the shadows, or they try to shine the light on either themselves or other people. But when we shine a light outward from ourselves, we're creating a shadow from ourselves and all of those different things. And this concept of illumination to me is about becoming the light bulb. Because when you're the light bulb, when you're the source of light, there is no shadow around you.
I said to myself, I'm going to change this room. I want to change the way leaders show up to not just serve their needs, but to serve what makes the company and the people better. And that's why I literally got up and walked out and said, I'm leaving this room to change the room. The realization I had was that it doesn't really matter who's right and who's wrong. What matters is...
Welcome back to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here by now. And I love having the real raw conversations with those who are having impact and influence in this world. And sometimes we just get really cool surprises with individuals who've got very dynamic stories and are always doing things in a unique and different way. One of the things that stood out to me about this individual was something that they self-identify as really ultimately being a museum nerd, which tells me a whole lot about this person beyond just a little bit of conversation that I've had thus far. And I look forward to exploring that even further. But Tony Martignetti joined us on our live show briefly before coming on here. And as a leader, advisor, coach, he also has a pretty unique way of helping people elevate to the peaks that they desire and also understanding the grounding of things as simple as campfires. He's got books, podcasts, frameworks, and lessons that all teach about both the heights as well as the grounding that exist all in life. And he's been recognized by many sources as a thought leader and an impactor in this space. But what I've enjoyed in the little bit of interaction I've had with him is his realness, his groundedness, and his willingness to be able to have real conversations. So Tony, man, I'm looking forward to having you here with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Brian. This has been great to get to know you, and I'm looking forward to diving in and exploring some really cool subjects.
Beautiful. Well, the only question I ask every guest on both shows, and you know this one because I asked it to you before, but it's also the only question I ask every guest on this show is, outside of however I've introduced you and whatever I've said about you so far, Tony, who are you in your words?
Yeah, in my words, I'm someone who loves to explore other people's identities and help them to bring them to the surface. I say I illuminate hidden brilliance. And what that means is that oftentimes we don't know what's hiding inside. And I help them to create a space and explore what's really waiting to be emerged. So.
I just have to pause for a second because sometimes there's these like really beautiful synchronicities that take place in our days. And today, this is happening in my world, and it's relevant to you. I already had another guest on today that I've interviewed, and it's interesting because the word illuminate was also very prominent in her description. And she's also somebody that's an endurance athlete, has climbed many mountains, and teaches in a similar fashion. And so that word really caught attention to me, especially hearing it the second time through you. What does illuminate mean to you? And when did you realize both the importance of it as well as your gift for it?
Yeah, it's so interesting how that is. There's a moment when this starts to kind of show up more and more often, and and I'm so glad that you mentioned this. So for me, what it means is that there's a light inside of us that's just dying to get out. And, you know, I think one of the things about illumination is that it's not just about you. It's about the people around you. It's about what you do for other people once you shine that light a little brighter. And so what I found about myself is that, you know, we're walking around, and for me especially, I spent many years kind of having the light dimmed and just feeling like, okay, there's something missing. And until you find that thing that, you know, makes you come alive, that lights you up and creates a sense of like, yes, that's what I want to be doing. And that's what I need to be doing more of in my life. And that changes everything. It changes everything for you. It changes everything for people around you. And that's why illumination is so key. I'll just mention one more thing around this, which is that I used to always talk about inspiration, and inspiration is important, but illumination is like the next evolution of inspiration.
Well, again, not even at all a coincidence that this is connecting on this, but this prior guest, her whole thing is on sustaining ambition, sustainability. Yeah. Right? And what you just said is the difference, because inspiration isn't sustainability. Illumination is. Right.
Yes.
And that's also what I hear through you. And that's very strong in the language. And so just, I call attention to it because sometimes we get these gifts where we just see these synchronicities with two different people who speak two totally different languages, yet there's this commonality that comes together. And yet it is so important. One of the things that I find, and I say to this concept of illumination, is that so many people feel like they've either been stuck in the shadows, hidden in the shadows, right? Or they try to shine the light on either themselves or other people. But when we shine a light outward from ourselves, we're creating a shadow from ourselves and all of those different things. And this concept of illumination to me is about becoming the light bulb. Because when you're the light bulb, when you're the source of light, there is no shadow around you, right?
Yeah.
And you can teach that to other people so they can start to stand in their own. And I really appreciate the distinction of how you shifted that, because that's truly, to me, what it is about is, to your point, what lights you up, what gets you going, and what allows you to shine your brilliance into the world. I find that most people who do work like you, like me, like this other person, in a capacity of helping other people. And I'm going to dive deeper into some of the ways you described yourself with this fascination of discovering people's identities, because I think that ties closely to your fascination around museums and history and people in their crafts and brilliance in general. So I know those, I'm sure, are connected. But I want to bring this back because typically we're teaching from a place where we needed it ourselves. We're teaching from a place, and you even said it, you lived in a place where it was almost dulled in all these components. And so maybe shine a light for us into the elements in your life early on that caused you to either not see your own natural illumination or caused you to dim it because of whatever reason.
Yeah, I love this question. One of the things that that had me feeling like my light was dimmed is that I just felt like I was being asked to be the analytical person, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's the work I was doing in my prior life. I was in finance, and analysis is what I did. But there was always a sense that something was missing for me, and opining on strategy or getting into other areas that were not in my wheelhouse, or dealing with creativity wasn't seen as part of who I was meant to be in the world that I was in. The reality is it was. I mean, I was just stuffing that stuff down, way down. And it just felt like I was just holding myself back. It's like putting a governor on your engine, if you know what I mean. It's like you felt like there's more gears that I could be having, but I'm not allowing that to happen. And the reality is that as soon as I allowed that freedom to express, wow, things started to really change. And not just did I feel more alive, but people experienced me in a different way. And that experience was what I needed more of. And so I started craving more of it. But the challenge is that you need to make sure that you harness it in the right way. You can't just go out guns blazing. You need to figure out, well, what is it that I truly do that makes people feel the light, feel my brilliance, and how is it expressed? So that exploration process is an important aspect of this. How do you understand it, and how do you experiment with it?
So what I resonate with a lot of what you said from my own experience and own story. Okay. And again, today's not about me, it's about you. But what I also hear is that through the process of doing this, there was, for lack of a better term, an inflection point.
Yeah.
There was a moment that you were able to see something differently, choose something differently, change your dynamic in a way that it was reflected. And this goes full back circle to what you said in the beginning with illuminate is not just for you, it's for those around you.
Yeah.
Right. Because as you made this choice to not dim your light. So why don't you take us to that time in your life when you started to realize that there was something more, that you were feeling like you were holding yourself back, and bring us into the moment or moments that allowed you to start to experience it differently? Because to your point, the journey is where it's at. Bring us into the journey and give us the details of what you experienced as we continue to unpack some of this.
Yeah. And there were moments. So it wasn't just one moment, but I'll just start with the moment that I decided that it was time for me to leave the corporate world and try a different path. And that was when I realized that I was sitting around in a boardroom with executives that didn't see things my way. And I'm not saying that my way was the right way, but in the meaning that I was realizing that I was fitting into a mold of this corporate structure that wasn't inspiring. It wasn't aligned with getting people to wake up every day and feel connected to the work. Instead, it was all about just, turning the crank and making sure that there was just an element of how do we keep making more money or continuing to progress based on what is going to make this company better, not what makes our people better. And so when I realized that, I said to myself, I'm going to change this room. I want to change the way leaders show up to not just serve their needs, but to serve what makes the company and the people better. Yep. And that's why I literally got up and walked out and said, I'm leaving this room to change the room. And that was the start of my first moment of saying, I can do better. And the way that I can do better is I can help others do better. Okay. And so that was my first moment, as I call it a flashpoint of deciding that I am the person I've been waiting for. And I need to be able to take that step and leave the room to change the room. But
I appreciate that there's many moments, but I want to pause on this one for just a second. Okay. Because again, that's why I asked the question I did. It's like the moments are moments, right? Because rarely is it one moment. It's typically a string of them, right? Yeah. And yet often there's a first. Sounds like this was the first, or at least one of the more meaningful moments.
Yes.
And so I hear the backstory. I hear where you're currently at. What I'm curious about in that moment, you were in the room actively. Something happened in that room that created a stimulus within you that was like, nope, it's time for me to stand up and literally walk out. Yeah. Right. And sometimes we only get clarity after we take the action, meaning challenge or confirmation smacks us right in the face after we do it. And we know, right? And so I want you to just really help us understand, like, what gave you, what prompted in that moment, what gave you the courage to stand up and walk out? And what was that resonant feeling as you were either out of the building, realizing what you'd just done, or any other number of ways that you want to describe it?
Yeah, I'll just describe it this way in terms of what led me to make that bold move. A scary move, I'll say, because it definitely was scary, was that I was listening to some of the executives talk about who was right and who was wrong about a particular FDA decision, what they said and how they said it. And it was more about being protecting themselves, protecting their own image in the room. And this is in front of all these other people. Yep. And the realization I had was it doesn't really matter who's right and who's wrong. What matters is, what are we going to do with what we have in the room? And how do we move forward from here? Because that's what's most important. It's not about self-preservation, and it's not about right and wrong. It's about moving forward. And I think that realization, when I saw that this was about protecting your image, that didn't sit well with me. And so I decided at that point that I want to work with leaders who don't care about being right or wrong. I mean, about being right. They want to do what's right. Yep. And so I had that feeling rise up, but it wasn't just in that moment. It was about what led up to that moment.
It'd been building to the moment. Yeah, totally. Understand that. Yep.
And so that's what got me to feel that sense of like, all right, this is the time. I've had enough. And the things that led up, just to give you a few things that did lead up to this, is, this sentiment of like, oh, well, who cares if they leave this person who is having a trouble with like, doing the right things for the role. They would just treat them like cogs in the wheel and saying like, oh, we'll just replace that person. Oh, who cares? No big deal. But I would hear those things and I would say to myself, like, gosh, like these are people, and these are people who put in their hard time and their time away from family, their effort into the work that we do every day, not only to do important things, but to save other lives. Yeah. And they're sacrificing their lives to put in to save other lives. Yeah. Now that's a big deal to me. And that's what started to build up in me, is that sense that, we need to care about the people who care for other people.
Yeah. You said so many elements of language in there that resonate deeply with me. I'm always people before profits. I want to surround myself with people who want for me, not just from me. Right. Yeah. And yet in so many of those elements too, one of the cores of what we teach is that the second you protect yourself, you guarantee you're going to disconnect yourself from who you are and what you want, and ultimately guarantee you're going to disconnect from all the people in the room. And that's one of the most vicious and toxic things that takes place in a leadership cycle is when that happens in a way that you just described. And so I really highlight this. Even in my coaching, I do hot seats all the time. And one of the things that's important for me, for everyone to understand, is that I don't give a fuck about being right. I care about getting it right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so much of the language that you just used resonated so deeply with the way I believe and teach. And with that, I want to call out something, and I want to be clear here. This isn't a challenge. This is a potential chance to illuminate either for myself in understanding or illuminate for you in something that's interesting. You're the author of the book, Climbing the Right Mountain. And if we look at right versus wrong, being right versus getting it right, I could argue there's 50 different ways to do that. Mm-hmm. But the surface level implication for somebody who's not in this discussion and understanding the depths and nuances of it is gonna be like, well, does that mean I'm climbing the wrong mountain? Help me understand from your perspective the nature of the book, Climbing the Right Mountain. What does that mean to you? Why did you write it? And what will people get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, Climbing the Right Mountain is really about changing your lens of what success means to you and doing it on your terms. And I think that is a key thing that, even up to that moment, realizing that I had climbed this mountain that got me into that room and feeling like, is this what I really wanted?
Yeah.
Is this the room I wanted to be in? Is this what success is?
So right for you, right for the individual. Yeah. Yes, that's what I thought you were saying. Okay.
Yeah. And I think ultimately it's not about being right per se. It's about understanding, how do I redefine what it is important to me?
Correct.
I think that was the premise that I entered the book with, is how do we get people to reassess where they are? When you're climbing, there's times when you're just going to take a step back and say, where am I? Where am I in the climb? Well, where am I still connected to why I started? Am I enjoying the process of who I'm becoming? Because oftentimes when we start in the climb, we struggle. Now, growth is not easy, but we need to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons, not just because we're expecting that at some point when we get to the top, we're going to enjoy where we are. That's not true. What we should be doing is we should be enjoying who we're becoming along the journey, and the fulfillment is in the climb as well as at the top.
Yes. But the critical distinction is about understanding, like, what is the peak that you're wanting to climb to in the first place?
Yes.
Because I think what and what you're saying in this, and I've worked with so many others, there are so many people that don't even realize until their 40s, 50s, or 60s that they've been living their life to meet their dad's standard or the society standard, or to fit within what's right and accepted versus what's right for them. Right.
Exactly.
And that's the distinguishing factor between all of this, is that the clarity in you and what's right for you is always right. Right? Especially if it's not done so in a way that's intentionally facilitated to create damage for others, right? It's not selfish. Mm-hmm. It's illuminating. It helps everyone. And this is what I'm hearing through a lot of what you're discussing. How many years ago did this transition take place? And give us a little bit of a feel from when you stepped out. What did that process look like from leaving corporate America to being able to live the life that you're living today?
Yeah, that was 7 years ago, almost 8 now. And
congratulations, by the way. That's awesome.
Thank you. And honestly, I will say that it's, you think that you have arrived once you leave the nest, but it's not true. I mean, at first you panic. There's all those moments of like, okay, what am I doing? Who am I to go on my own, and create this path? But the reality is that, those feelings, everything that you go through this process of creating your own path, it's all meant for you to experience the different emotions. You go through these emotional roller coasters that get you to where you finally are figuring out the things that you need to figure out. And the two quotes that I always think about when I think about the early days especially is that if you're willing to feel everything, you can have anything, which is a quote from Peter Bregman. I love that quote because there's something about the ability to leap into the unknown and know that it's going to be a roller coaster, and you have to build your emotional range of to experience the highs and the lows that go along with being in uncertainty. So that's one. And then the other one, which really describes the early days a lot, which is that amateurs compete and professionals create.
Yep.
And that fueled a lot of the early days of just getting out and having conversations with people who were in the same space that I was entering, and learning from them and knowing that it's not about, holding tight to the vest and being in a scarcity mode. Instead, it's about, what can I learn? Who can I talk to who might be able to help me on the journey? Don't go it alone. Yeah.
Yep. But what you also just hit on that is the beauty and the contrast of life, and that like you have to be able to experience all of it to experience any of it, right? Like that quote is also experiencing. And, you referenced it, and even in the idea of the mountain, it's like we climb multiple mountains in our lives, right?
Yes.
You talked about the roller coaster of emotions. And so all of that is the contrast that exists. I want you to anchor us for just a minute. If you had to pick the emotion that you had at the top of that roller coaster and the emotion that you had at the bottom of that roller coaster, what were they and how did you move through them?
Yeah. I'll just start with the peak is, standing in front of, a crowd of 2,000 people and speaking about something that really resonates with your soul, but then realizing that, my gosh, like these people really appreciate what I'm giving them, and they can see, and they're feeling an impact of what I have created. And there's something that's so makes you want to cry, tears of joy that you're doing this work that you didn't know even existed back when you're in the corporate world. I know that sounds really out there, but it's true. That's feeling of resonance, that you're doing work that you couldn't even imagine doing.
Yeah.
And then at the pit of that, there's a sense of gosh, what am I doing? There's moments when you're just feeling like, where's my next dollar going to come from? And how do I continue to stay on this track? How do I commit to this process? And a voice in the back of your head says, just keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going. You got this. And one of the things I'll say in that vein, of when I'm in the darkest of moments, I always say, if I'm stuck, talk to people. Talk to people, because they're going to be the ones who are going to help you to see that you are doing good work. You're doing work that is helping people. All you need to do is just continue on and continue to find ways to contribute.
Yeah. Do I have permission to reflect something back to you? And this isn't going to be totally revolutionary and probably not a full soul hit, but it's something that's nuanced in what you said that I think is really beautiful. I want to call attention to for you and everyone. What you largely talked about in the corporate space was that you were not seen.
Oh, yeah.
You were not felt, you were not heard, you were not respected, you were not valued, even though you were very good at the transactions and the analysis that you produced.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what that causes in a lot of us who chase this desire of success, right? Like myself, I learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, which meant it was always contingent upon what I did, not who I was. Right? And what's really interesting about all of this is that your high is not only about now what you're doing, but it's also the greatest representation of who you are, even though you couldn't envision it at one point.
Yeah.
And so what's super cool about this is that you're not only in a position to stand on stage and actually feel seen, heard, felt, understood, that you are resonating and you are illuminating that light for yourself and for others. But the irony in all of that as well is the second that you get off stage, you're unemployed as a speaker. And therefore it's well, do they really value me? Where's the next one coming from? How am I good enough? Am I going to be able to get back on that stage in 2000? And the reason I highlight all this is because it's also totally about the contrast that we just discussed about.
Yeah.
But yet I understand, I believe that my greatest spot, my freedom, when I can channel everything is when I'm on stage. And everybody's like, well, it's because of all the attention. What's funny is I'm blind to the audience, except for the people that I'm engaging with right in front of me. I can feel the energy, but I don't know, right? It could be 2,000 people or 20 people, and I find myself so present. It's about how present I am and how open and allowing I am that allows the energy to move. And so I fully feel like that's one of my best places. But Tony, the reason I reflected this back to you is that's where I want to challenge you, is in those dark moments, what element of what you're doing is still for seeking validation, connection, and love through performance, i.e. what you're doing, versus the full acceptance and ownership of knowing that you already are, and you're already facilitating being loved for who you are.
Yeah. Oh God. Brian, you hit so many great things there, because it's so true. We just forget who we are in those moments.
Yep.
And I think that's why we just need to sometimes take a step back and put it all in perspective, because at that moment, we've lost ourselves. We've lost connection to who we are and why we do what we do. And when you said love, that was something that hit a nerve with me, because I might have mentioned this to you before, but there's this idea that I've been resonating with the past year, especially, is that instead of trying to be of value to people, be of love. Yeah. And when we know we're being of love is when we have that moment of resonance where we know that other people can feel us. Mm-hmm. And that is something that changes the game, right?
It does.
And we know we feel appreciated, seen, and heard, just like you said. And that's a difference maker. We're no longer trying to be of value. Instead, we're being of love because we're giving of ourselves.
Yeah. You've mentioned it many, many, many times, and it's something I've been intending to loop back to, but it didn't feel right until this moment. For most of my life, I'm going to say most of my adult performing life, not most of my life, most of my adult performing life, did not even believe that I was a creative person. When in reality, I'm really fucking highly creative in many, 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 many things. And it's not just about the creative outlet. Mm-hmm. You've talked about this journey of being able to understand like where you were lacking creativity and how much more you feel compelled, inspired, but truly illuminating when you're in a position to create, right? I loved that quote that you gave, right? Like whatever it was, amateurs compete, pros create, because that is the truth. Pros just go find the way, they create the solution, they do it. But yet many of us didn't know we were even creative. Yeah. So that's what I want to understand is what's your creative journey? Like that story arc for you? Like, was it something that happened early in life and went away and you had to find again? It got diminished. Like, help me understand your relationship with creativity up until this moment and where is it now?
Yeah. I love that you bring this up because when you think about the, like most adults, I mean, most of us, we have that like unabashed creativity when we were kids and, you know, we do things, you know, in whatever medium that might look like. It might be just like making sandcastles. But for me, it was, you know, painting and drawing as a kid, you know, creating worlds that had emotional resonance with people. And I know that sounds weird.
Of course you did. Of course you did, Tony. I love that for you. Yeah.
And I loved doing that. And even the teachers who saw that I was doing this work, they're like, wow, you're doing something that's really interesting. And they would really celebrate that and say like, okay, this kid's going someplace with the arts. And even up until high school, I was, you know, kind of slated to be an architect or something to that effect. But of course, switched gears, went into pre-med, and then decided to go on a completely different track. So a lot of that just got squashed down in the desire to fit into the rest of society and the professional realm. And all things happened where, you know, even though it was nice to have this creative outlet, I didn't pursue it. And I, in fact, didn't even spend a lot of time doing it. And even as I got into the world of coaching and facilitation, I didn't spend a lot of time doing creativity, you know, seeing creativity as part of who I was, besides being part of the conversation. I saw conversations as a gateway to creativity.
Agree.
Then, as time went on, and this is, I'd say like 3 or 4 years ago, I started to see how like I can bring creativity into the work. I started writing poetry. I started to bring elements of into my writing as I wrote more and more and more. I said, I don't have to be like everyone else. I don't have to write about this cookie cutter type of leadership talk. I can bring things like glass blowing into my work, which I loved doing. So I started experimenting with other things. And now I even facilitate with using not glass, but using art as a modality to get people to experience emotions more deeply.
Yeah. Which, you know, so often I say that a lot of this work is actually about shedding enough layers to get back to who we already are, right? That we've forgotten. And in many ways, your early life, you were already creating worlds and realities where that emotional depth was created in your art.
Yes.
So it would make all the sense in the world that it's going to come full circle to now be a tool and a medium for how you facilitate some of that work. And I want to just tell you, I think it's really, really beautiful how you've been able to refine not just the element of creativity that you possessed. But I would suggest that through this whole process, you've been able to find yourself again. And that's also what you're now trying to help others do, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's not about perfection in any way, shape, or form, but it's like, it's seeing the creativity in whatever they do. And now looking at it backwards and seeing how, like, even the work I was doing in finance, there was always ways to be creative, not like in a, cook the books way, but like, how I would design slide decks and how I would present the numbers, or even how I would design reports. I was always trying to do things that would be, how can I think differently about this? But
I'm really happy you said that. I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish what you were saying. Keep going.
No, I'm just saying, but I never really thought of it that way. I always thought of it as that's just what needs to be done.
So that, though, is exactly, I'm super happy you brought it there, because that is one of the things that I've had to shatter my own perceptions on around this idea of creativity. The reason I never viewed myself as a creative person is because I didn't fit into a creative box. Art, photography, videography. I didn't fit into what would be considered the creative field. However, creativity comes out for everyone in every way. Right? Creativity for a large logistics company is about how they view the logistics and the moving of the people and the systems. It's in financial analysts or anybody that's in the financial services industry. It's how do we interpret the numbers? How do we communicate the numbers? How do we present the numbers? What do the numbers tell us? What do we intuitively feel as a result of what's, I mean, it's like, it's all about, at the end of the day, the people. And how do we make whatever medium we're working within accessible to ourselves and to others? And that's one of the reasons I like studying high performers in every category, right? And one of the reasons I like to get to the core of people's identities, because when you can see their brilliance, you also see their creativity real time, typically side by side. And so that's where I want to just transition just a little bit. I said it in your intro, and we've not talked about it at all yet, but you're a museum nerd.
Yes.
Right. And first I want to know what that means. Like when you say you're a self-identified museum nerd, like what does that mean? And then bring us deeper into what is the connection that you have with museums and the exploration of them.
Yeah. And first of all, I'll just say, being a museum nerd is like, it's just something that I didn't realize until I started to look back and see, like, why have I always been, drawn to these places? And, it was two things. Number one, it was not just about the artwork in the museums or the, whatever it was that was in the museums. It was also about the exploration. And number two, it was about the architecture, the place. As you think about what I was saying earlier about my artwork, the rooms, they're meant to evoke a feeling, a space that allows us to experience the art in a different way. And that's why they're organized and curated in a certain way. And so for me, museums are like a perfect box for us to get into, where we get to experience things because they're purposely placed to have us feel something. Yeah. And, this element of traveling in time and in story. So when we look at something, we can say, like, what is going on here? How do we experience this piece of art or this sculpture? What is it trying to tell us? What is the story behind it? And so those things just, pique our curiosity and go on an exploration of, where are we going with this? Yeah. And so this connects back to my work, because that's what I'm doing all day long, is I'm having these explorations with people and exploring into their world. And I've created a program called the Personal Museum. What are the things that are in your personal museum that are artifacts of where you've been and where you're going?
I love that. And I want to unpack that even further, but I have to lean into what you literally just said, because it's too right in front of me to not ask. What does your personal museum look like? What are the artifacts?
Yeah.
What are the pieces that have shaped you?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. Number one is I always include this little cube that, is an important part of it, because I think the cube itself is about the dimensionality of who we are. And the cube is like that we're in a box, but we're not in the box. The box is where they want to keep us in, but we were able to get outside of that box. So there's always the cube is the first artifact. The other artifact is I have a statue of a Buddha, a little one that I got from India. And this trip was really spiritual for me because it was the beginning of my journey into entrepreneurship. And when I went there, the Buddha statue was a representation of like the calmness and the groundedness that it takes to navigate through life. We can't be frazzled. We can't be constantly, busy, busy, busy. We need to sometimes slow down and allow ourselves to let go of all of that. So that's another artifact for me, as the sense of like reminding myself that I am a place for groundedness, and I am groundedness for myself.
Well, and before we started recording, you had jumped on, you said, hey, I just need a second. I need to step away. Mm-hmm. But what was beautiful about that is I got to see your entire bookshelf behind you and the artifacts that you've collected and the number of books that are clearly from museums that you visited. I saw the Louvre and some others that were in there. And yet these are all a part of your story that you've collected and bring alongside you. And also, to your point, you keep them in front of you, or rather behind you, to remind and ground you of so many of these things. I really appreciate even just the nuance in how you navigate and discuss these things. And because we've talked about the other side of this, and the right mountain, the other side of this is that you lead a podcast called The Virtual Campfire and Campfire Lessons for Leaders. And the reason I call attention to that is because just as much as I love to climb mountains and, reach that next peak for myself when it's aligned and in space, one of the places similar to being on stage that I can lose myself in the moment is looking at the embers and the coals at the bottom of a campfire, and the laughter and the communication and the connection that I have experienced around a campfire. Just the most organic way of heating ourselves that dates back in time, burning wood or something else to keep us all warm, connect, and keep it all together. I see so many elements of resonance that are here, but I'd like you to talk about the intentionality that went into both the name of the podcast and the second book, and why are campfires what grounded it for you?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'll just say everything you mentioned is spot on. This idea of the campfire as being a place where intimate conversations are had. We don't talk about surface level things at the campfire. We talk about meaningful things. So there was something about that, imagery that I wanted to evoke when I started to bring the campfire into being. And that's exactly the intention. And interestingly enough, I wasn't originally going to be a podcast. It was going to be a live space. And so that was something I had to flip because of the pandemic, which is, it's hard to believe. I started this in 2020, and now I just reached 300 episodes published, which is a remarkable
good for you
achievement for me.
Good for you.
In terms of another part of this, which is something I haven't mentioned in the past, but it's something that I've been recently thinking about, is this idea of transformation, right? Fire transforms. It transforms food. It transforms all of it, everything. And when I was in India, I remember going to these things called puja ceremonies. And puja ceremonies are all about, using fire as a way to transform us. We put things into the fire as a ceremony, and those ceremonies are all about changing who we are, changing something from one thing to another. And I think that's also that ceremony is what I'm also aiming for. We come to a campfire, we hope to leave as someone different or feeling different.
Yeah.
And that's the hope that, when people come to an experience of being even interviewed at the campfire, that they feel as though they've opened up something that they hadn't seen before.
Yeah. Well, and as crazy as fire is, it really does transform. You and I are going to have, I'm sure, many more cool conversations because I love the resonance. I have a phoenix bird on my right arm because I feel like I've burned down to the ashes and risen out of it more times than I can count in my life. And yet what's also really funny is the tangible, like real nature of it, because fire and under the heat, things literally chemically change.
Yes.
Right. And so I was watching, I don't do a lot of doom scrolling on social media, but I had about a 10-minute window today, and I jumped on and I was just going through a couple of memes, and one that jumped up was an ad, ironically enough. And it was for a company that was advertising how they clean stadium seats. And they were going to all these outdoor stadiums where the plastic seats had fallen and they were faded and they were not looking good. And they're literally taking like a blowtorch to it, and in such a light manner that they're burning the seat. But what are they doing? They're bringing all the natural color back to the surface. They're bringing all of its ability with the plastic to like thrive again under fire, even though it's been the heat that beat it out of them. right?
Yeah.
And so it does transform. And I think it's a really beautiful analogy, even for you and your creativity, especially because I had forgotten that from our live show, and you mentioned again here earlier, you actually use fire in your glass blowing in a very powerful way. I mean, fire at a hot enough temperature can take sand and turn it into glass. It can melt glass to make it malleable, even though it's still very fragile and sensitive. And so that's, I think, where I want to bring us for just a second is, what have you learned through the art and practice of glass blowing that you can teach and relate back to life for each and every one of your clients?
Yeah. And there's a couple things I'll just mention, because as you were talking about this, there's like too much heat. We need to have heat. We need to bring heat into a situation, because if we don't have heat, or like a little bit of stress, a little bit of, challenge, then we don't grow. We don't get to where we need to go. But obviously, if you keep the heat on too long, what happens is you break. Just like glass breaks, So the idea is trying to find out, how do we make sure we have the right amount of heat, but not too much, and knowing how to find that, and I hate saying the balance, but making sure we are able to hold the right amount of tension that allows us to see where we need to go, without pushing it so far that it breaks.
And I'll take that a step further in the analogy that you use specific to glass blowing. But if you change temperatures too dramatically in a moment, it also can cause it to break.
Yes.
So it's both about understanding the modulation and the limits on both sides. But if I'm existing at this heat, I can't go to this level of cool. Otherwise, everything shatters.
Exactly.
Right. And that, I would say, is true in life as well.
Yeah.
You talked about how you use glass blowing or different types of art to help your clients explore this.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to ask it as a close-ended question. And if I can't figure out a way to ask it as open-ended, then please take it wherever you want. But I guess my question is how do you facilitate the artistic representation of someone's own process in a medium that maybe they've never touched before, like glass blowing or something else? Like, help me understand how. If it's the right mountain, how do you determine the right medium for their artistic outlet? Like, help me see this in how you use this to facilitate. And I guess the how on your judgment or intuition as to, again, the medium that's appropriate for the person in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, your question is really a good one, because of the fact that part of this is to allow people to see it as, this is not about performance, it's about play. And it's about experimenting in the moment. So there's no getting it right out of the gate, but it's about feeling their way through what this means right now, as you're going through, as you're experimenting with whatever it is that we're creating in the moment. And through that process, something is revealed. And I'm going to get a little bit psychological in a moment, but I'll just say, like, if you think about your subconscious, it actually loves to play.
Yep.
But what happens is our conscious mind, the complex, is always saying, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, it's unsafe, or don't do that. All of these things that are kind of like always putting on the buffer, the safety zone, and trying to keep us in place so that we don't look bad or we don't make a mistake. And so ultimately, when we're in the play zone, it's because we're letting go of all of this performance. And instead, we're allowing ourselves to just be and let go. And that's exactly what we need to do to explore these things. Yeah. It's almost like we are coming back to our childlike playfulness that allows us to say, who were we before the world said, you need to be this?
There's so many overlaps. I often tell people that the core of this is getting them back to who they were before the world told them who to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And again, just like you returning back to that creative artistic self early on in life that was using depth and emotion in communities, you're using it in your work today, right? It's just that it looks different than you could have ever envisioned it. And yet it's still the same expression of that heart. I'm going to go on a flyer here and lean into my intuition, knowing that most of the time it's directionally accurate, but sometimes it flops, or it flops in terms of how the other person receives it. But would it be fair to say that throughout the course of our conversation, you have felt some very deep emotions through our discussion? almost to the point that I would suggest there have been near tears in your eyes a few times. Is that accurate?
Definitely. I mean, and the reason why is because you're asking questions. First of all, you're a great interviewer. And I will say that the way that you're asking these questions, it's hitting to the core of the things that are important to me. And, if I was someone who was just here to perform, I would be polishing things up and saying like, oh, don't go there. Don't go there. From the moment,
and then you probably wouldn't have gotten past 10 minutes of the interview, by the way, because I would have been like, "Oh, this was nice meeting you, Tony. Good to chat on this surface level bullshit." No, sorry,
but it's true. I mean, if you want to live a full life, just as I said in that quote, there's an idea of letting things show up as they are, and not being performative allows us to be more expressive of what's real. Yeah.
So I'm going to challenge you in just a moment if I have permission, because thank you for saying, yes, it was accurate and giving some depth as to like what shaped it or why. Mm-hmm. I'd like you for just a second to try to articulate the emotion that you felt in the few moments that it's come up. What is it that you're experiencing on the tail end of the questions that are hitting into the core of what you care about that's causing the emotion? What's rising? And yet at the same time, I would suggest, though you haven't held it back, there's also been a level of measure that I can see you are putting in place, not to perform or to restrict, but just to be. And so help me understand the modulation that you're experiencing when this comes really raw in these moments. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Tony, but you're a beautiful example of what can be possible with people. And your emotional expression is so real. I want to honor it, but I also want to help explain it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm not someone who can hide emotions well. I think maybe that's always been an issue. And I think it's interesting. I had a conversation with Jerry Colonna. I'm not sure if you know Jerry, but Jerry and I had this moment where we said he's like, I know that you and I have this thing in common. You're an empath. There's something about you feeling the emotions of others, and you feel deeply. And I'm like, yeah, that's something that maybe it's been a curse of mine, but I think of it as a gift. Yeah. I don't necessarily feel like I want to hold back those emotions, because I feel them on the surface, and I feel them deeply.
Yes, you do.
And with that, it allows me to connect with people on a very deep level and quickly. When I meet somebody who I resonate with, I want to get to know them, and I want them to get to know me, and I don't want that to be a barrier. So I try to be as upfront and honest about that.
Yeah.
So
what I also call attention to, and I just want to make sure the nuance in the language for you is framed this way. You talked about your emotions having often been an issue for you. Mm-hmm. The nuance in that is that it was often an issue for those that were around you. That got projected on you, and that it's never actually been an issue for you.
Yeah.
And I just want to reflect that back in this moment, because why I challenged you on this to go deeper is the way you answered that question goes to the exact core of everything that I was sharing with you that I teach around this idea of the second you protect, you disconnect. And I think that your emotions, even in the little bit that I see you still cellular memory acting in and modulating, probably beyond even where you naturally want to, I want to invite you to allow that even further.
Yeah.
And that will in and of itself create a mirror for you as well, for either the people that are ready to resonate with you fully and deeply, or for those that are not. Because it is an honest and very accurate expression of who you are. And just like that's the case, I'm somebody that learned to condition tears out of me a long time ago. However, I'm also an empath, and I feel everything from everyone in every situation. And I've got to separate what energy's mine, what energy's not mine. Talk to my daughter who's an empath so that she can identify these things, because she'll feel somebody else's energy and go to tears instantly and not understand it, right? Like it's the confusion of all of it. But the issue is, and never has been, emotions. It's been how most people are uncomfortable around emotions. Because human connection without emotion is not human connection. And you're a facilitator for that. And I don't ever want that to be held back.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really appreciate that reflection back, and the kind of the permission, really, because I think that's one of the things that we're doing for others is giving them permission
every time
to express in that way. And that is what is a gift that we offer. Yeah.
Tony, my reason for existence, my stated purpose at this point in my life is to allow my truth to give others permission to live theirs.
Beautiful.
The resonance of the language throughout our conversation is not a coincidence, and it is there, and it is real, and it is universal truth. my words are different than your words. It's what makes it accessible to different people. But your heart is very clearly speaking loud and clear. And one of the greatest gifts I was given was by a woman who volunteered her job full time into a largely Hispanic speaking culture and only spoke about 12 words of Spanish. But you would have never known that watching this woman interact with all of these people that she cared for. And she said to me one day, she said, Brian, the heart will speak more clearly than any words ever will.
Mm. Yeah, I want that like emblazoned on my tombstone. No, I just love it. It's just such a brilliant thing.
I felt the same way when I heard it from her. She is brilliant, and that's why I try to give credit to it. But it's also why I shared it with you, because I feel like that's how you live, and that's what you are doing. Is you're allowing your heart. The more you're allowing your heart to open up, the more you're allowing your heart to lead your head, the more you're illuminating yourself, and therefore the easier it is for you to illuminate everyone else around you. Yeah. And so I appreciate so much of the work that you're doing, but that's also the beautiful part about the virtual campfire. It's literally shining light and creating light and heat and connection all in the same moment for people to see, to feel, to experience what can be possible by watching wood burn right in front of them and transform into an experience. You do that in how you live.
Thank you so much. I mean, that reflection back is so wonderful because it's also like one of the things that I have been having a hard time putting into words what it is that people experience. I mean, it's not just the, people who are listening, but the people who have come on the show. You even had a recording today, and people often say like, oh, this is a different type of podcast. I've never had an experience like this. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I mean, it's great to hear that, but you never quite know what it is that you do. And even after 300 episodes, you're still thinking like, something's working. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I really appreciate how you've shown up today. I do want to ask, you are very clearly accessible, very grounded, very transparent, very real in so many ways. And you've been that way the whole conversation. So I have to say that from a place of thank you.
Thank you.
I am curious if you look at your life or your business, and I know that sometimes we reach this place in our lives where it's like, I don't really see it as challenge, restriction, or problems. But given where you're at and all the work that you've done, like if you had to identify your biggest problem in life or business in your current state, what is it?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think right now, I have a tendency to take on a lot. And it's because I'm a multi-passionate person. I'm curious about so many things. And so even though I help many other people slow down and appreciate what they're doing, I have a hard time slowing down and appreciating the moments. Here we are in the middle of the summer, and we're recording this, and I'm thinking to myself like, I should just take next week off and just relax. But I've got like 20 other things I should be doing and I want to be doing. And so that desire to keep on doing all the things that I love doing holds me back from the things that I probably should be doing, which is relaxing and taking time off and recharging. And so even, in this moment, as I say that, I'm like, I know I could use like a few days of just complete nothing. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to ask permission this time. I'm just going to share, and our listeners will have known this. They've heard this probably a million times by now. You should all over yourself. And should is in and of itself a shame-based word because it implies whoever you are and whatever you're doing, it's not good enough.
Mm. Yeah.
And there's a should trap that you have found yourself in as well, because even just this, you've even honored exactly what you know you need, as well as exactly what you know you want. Yeah. And yet, instead of looking at what are the things you could do or would do next week, if you weren't constricted by what you should do, you're still held to, there's all these things I should be doing. Yeah. And yet what I would suggest is if you look at glass blowing, when is what you should be doing ever exactly what turns out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And so the highlight on this is Tony, when do you give yourself full permission to live the way you teach others to live?
Not always, that's for sure. And I think that is one of the things that I think about flipping the lid. It's, this is the lid that needs to be flipped for me. If you know what I mean. It's like I need to give myself that permission more often. Yeah. Well,
and you do. And I think what you also know through creativity and expression, it's about actually allowing yourself to find the space where you can just play. And it sounds to me like you know that you need to play, but you've been in a push period for far too long And guess what? There's push, pause, and play periods in our lives all the time, right? You've been in push and you've been in pause, but it sounds to me like you need some play. It might also involve some pause.
Yeah.
So if you know that it's all one and the same, right? No different than when you climb a mountaintop. What do you often do when you hit the peak? You sit down and you look around.
Yeah. Appreciate what you've done.
It's like, oh shit. Like, look at the views from up here, man. There's all these other people that are coming. I can't believe I made the top of this mountain, right? Like, give yourself the ability to sit and see the views from where you currently are.
Yeah. And appreciate what you've done and not like say, oh, there's another mountain. Let me go climb that one now.
Because there's always going to be another mountain, especially for people like you and me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's all I would challenge you on is you're such a gift in giving this permission to others. But in the idea of illumination, you will illuminate far greater in a far more sustainable way, in a way that others will feel, experience, and take action when you yourself live in congruence to everything you teach. Yeah. And I know you do that. So I hope you hear this is not critical at all. I'm not in any way saying that there's something wrong here, but you deserve that, Tony. And I hope that you'll take that because you being the example for everything you teach, now you ground yourself in another example of it.
Yeah. Permission granted. Now I'm going to go take some time next week and see if I can move my calendar around and create some space.
So then your job is to text me in the moment that lights you up the most throughout the week so that we can celebrate that you did that, bro. I love that.
Done. Consider it done.
We are going to be putting everything in the show notes. I've obviously referenced your 2 books, your podcast. And so all of those things will be accessible to anybody who's listening to the show. I'm grateful for how you showed up so openly, so honestly. You allowed me to play with you a little bit today in a really fun, engaging way that helped us break the pattern of a traditional interview. And that was a gift coming from you and your ability to be present. And so as we wrap here today, my friend, do you have a closing message or something from your heart that you feel compelled to speak to the audience that stuck with us this long?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Creativity is for everyone. And it's also the gateway for us to express what's truly real for us. So don't be afraid. Just go out and do something that makes you feel alive. Be creative.
I love that. Tony, thank you, my friend. I'm really grateful for you.
Thank you.
And for those of you who just watched Tony flip open his lid and jump in, it is a story. It is an evolution. And guess what? We can create the perfect piece of art, but if we cool it too fast or we run too far into the fire, we're going to crack and break down. But also that typically happens when we don't find a way to live within the concepts and congruence of who we are, who you're meant to be, and to live to your standards of success, freedom, creativity, and everything else. You can fit inside the box, find yourself trapped, just like one of his artifacts demonstrated for us with the cube, but with curiosity, with creativity, and with the willingness to forge forward, you will find that freedom in every given moment, and you'll find the way to illuminate not just your path, but all of those around you. It's going to require you to flip open your lid and scan your can, but see you next time. You can get there. What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.